Welcome everyone, and just on our agenda today, we're reviewing consultants for ARPA funds. And Evan, I believe you have a couple of guests who are joining us here tonight.
Tom, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. My name is Tom Fagan. I'm with As of Our Government Solutions, along with my cohort, Steve Price, who runs our ARPA division of our company. And I'd like to introduce Steve. He has a short presentation to go through, if that is okay to start with, or maybe there's questions. I'm not sure.
Oh, that works if you want to jump right into it.
That's great. So here's Steve.
Thank you for having us tonight, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I'll give you a quick background of myself and my company, and then you guys are familiar with the American Rescue Plan Act, so I'll give you a little bit of what we're doing with that right now. But my company and we've been in business for 9 years now, and I'm not a retired government person, but a person who got worn out in government and worked in government for about 20 years, different aspects, local government always, different places I worked in, Louisiana and Florida were my two spots I worked in. And then since then, I've been in the private sector, and I've been involved with the grants management, disaster recovery, funding, project management, staff augmentation for governments. All of our businesses with the governments right now. And our main focus of government grants management has been, prior to COVID hitting, was disaster management, mostly being anytime you deal with FEMA and you had to get funds from FEMA related to reimbursement requests and that sort of stuff. And then when COVID hit, FEMA became an available resource for revenue for communities. So we represent several communities throughout the areas, some in Louisiana, some in Indiana, some in Illinois. And we assist them in getting their funding, the eligible reimbursements done, and getting funding to their governments. With that came the CARES Act and now the American Rescue Plan Act. So we learned on the fly, like everyone else, how these funds are eligible for use and how we're able to assist governments like yourself to ensure that you're not only getting the projects that you think are very important to you and your community through the American Rescue Plan Act, but making sure that you're vetting the projects so they meet the Act's requirements, making sure that you use them in the four broad categories that have been outlined for the American Rescue Plan Act. And we work closely with your staff and your committees or whoever you deem necessary to assist them to document everything properly. Should you decide to do any public outreach or anything like that to get input from the public, we will assist with all of that with the community. That's a real broad, quick view of what we do. I'd like to open it up for questions, or if you want me to go a little bit through the Act, I will be, but given that the Act has now been around for a little while, for 5 or 6 months, you probably have a good idea of what you can use the money for, how you can use it, that sort of stuff. But if you want me to go through that, I'd be happy to. So I'd like to open it up. I really think a lot of times a good dialogue to see what y'all may be looking for, how we can assist you, because our goal is to represent you, to make sure that when you get audited, years down the line, that the federal government doesn't ask you for any money back. So with that, I'll open the floor to comments or questions, and let me know if y'all want me to go further into the Act to discuss more of that.
Thanks, Steve. My name is Peter Carlson here. I'm the chair
Yes, sir.
of the subcommittee. Does anyone here have any questions for Steve?
I have one.
Yes.
So Steve, can you walk us through what you're doing in other communities, the level of your involvement with their project development or community outreach or any of that?
Yes, sir. Good question. We are currently working with a community, a local community, and I don't recall, how big is your community population wise? About?
20,000.
Okay, that's good. And we working with a community that's about 30,000 right now. And what we've done with them is we've outlined a public outreach program, because basically when you read the act, and one of the eligibility requirements is to get public involvement into inputs, basically into maybe what projects may be necessary. I've been on webinars learning about this when it first came out. And the good thing about that is the input that they want you to get, the federal government, the Treasury Department, is input only, no decision making. The decision making is by you guys at the town level, right? The people who are receiving the money make the decisions. So what we've done is we've done a social media plan with the community we're contracted with in Louisiana. We've outlined that. We held a public meeting, and then we will go to their council meeting, their budgetary meetings, when they're discussing the projects and they're funding the particular projects. In this case, most of their money is going to be used for water and sewer improvements, infrastructure improvements. They are not doing, they didn't have any revenue loss. They didn't have any issues with premium pay, and they don't own a hospital or anything like that, or even a medical facility. So we go through that with them, and now what we're doing is we're outlining a program to make sure that they are bidding having the proper bid documents done for the projects, advertising properly, selecting the professional engineers, architects, if you need those. We're making sure that all that's being done properly. And then we will follow the project through the project implementation, through construction, to ensure that the bills and the invoices are coming in properly. You're following Davis-Bacon Act. You're doing the things that you have to do to meet the Treasury's Department requirements for this money. We will bring that through the close of the project, make sure that all the payments made and everything. And at the very beginning, I'm gonna go back for one quick second. We'll set up a data collection system for them to make sure that they're getting the files right, whether we do it electronically, depending on the community, or we do it the old-fashioned style, paper-wise. We can do it either way. And we get that set up to ensure that you have everything that you need for 3 to 5 years, whatever the requirement's going to be for you to keep your documentation. So we get you through construction. You do your final payments to your contract and everything. Then we will get you through what's called closeout, which means we'll go back and reconcile the project to ensure that everything you paid was done properly. Make sure that the invoices were all paid. Make sure that the $100 that you spend was all justified and done according to accounting principles, basically generally accepted accounting principles. And we'll document all that. And then should you get audited, we'll help you and assist you with that. Does that help you?
Setting up the contract structure that you have with the community, is it hourly? Is it a do not exceed amount? Do you have an hourly rate that you're running?
Yes, sir. What we will do is we will give you a proposal with hourly rates in it, with a not to exceed amount. The basic number, and this is a basic number, that we use all the time with FEMA projects and the COVID projects and that sort of stuff for grants management. And what we're doing here, project management, grants management. is about 5 to 8% of the cost of the total project cost. So if you got $100, your project cost, it'll be between $5 and $8 for our services total. And what we do it hourly. We do that purposely because the federal government requires that we track hourly the time that we work. And even though we hit that 5 or that 8%, whatever it may be, they still want to see our hourly rates. We can't just give you a flat rate bill and say 8% of $1 million and boom, we're done. But we will set it up where it's hourly with a not to exceed, and we can do it by task too, if you like.
Steve, that's reimbursable as well through the program, correct?
It will be paid for through the program. That's correct, Tom. Thank you for bringing that up. So as a part of whatever your total dollars are that you have available, you're able to use some of those dollars for the services we provide.
Is allocated for the state to us at that 8% threshold. It's about 416,000. So we would set so the way that this would work, Steve and Tom, that we would set a threshold of, let's say, not to exceed something around that range of 416,000. And then you would work those hours, however many hours it took to manage all of the project through the life of this funding.
Yes, sir. We can do that. And we will make sure that our contract is acceptable by the Treasury Department on your behalf, so you can use these funds to pay us. And that's why these hourly rates and certain things will be in the contract that you may or may not use in other type contracts.
Where to start?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
No, I was saying, Peter was asking about different rates, but I have a rate sheet that gives your estimated rates on a proposal that we had from before. So it gives us an idea of where we would be working.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Any other questions for Steve or Tom?
Are you doing anything in Massachusetts? Have you done any communities in the state?
No, ma'am, not currently. No, ma'am.
Let's look at some proposals and then. So we can probably by Wednesday and let you know what we're planning on doing.
Okay, and in the meantime, if there's anything that you need from us, or if you have any questions about the proposal or need some additional information, please reach out. We'd be happy to answer and make the visit if we need to come see you. Whatever works for you. And may I bring up one last thing?
Sure.
One of the things that we would, given that a lot of this stuff can now be done over the internet and everything, like we're doing right now, the face-to-face part of this would be that should you decide to do business with us, we'd certainly be there to kick things off. And then if you notice, there's usually some positions in there that you don't need the expertise that we have to make those positions work. So we would probably look to local support to help us in some of the areas that would make it easier on you guys, so everything wouldn't have to be remote. You're welcome. Thank you.
We thank you so much for your time and allowing us to present to you. And we look forward to speaking with you later in the week. Is that it? I am not sure if anybody can hear us.
No, I just said thank you and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
There's one more
One more, okay,
after this.
all right. And then I ready.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you on your end. I think someone was just choppy there for a second.
That's from me. There. So Jennifer, can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
I think it's the, sorry, we're just,
Oh, no worries. When you're right there, it's fine. But as soon as you backed off, it went awry.
I'll just stand right here in front of it. You can look at the top of my,
That's
the top of
totally
my head the
fine.
whole time.
Oh,
No,
that's
it
totally
is coming
fine.
through the owl, so I don't know why it's doing that. All right, so Jennifer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Were you gonna do a presentation?
I can do a quick, I have a quick presentation. I think there's some slides in here that talk about ARPA in the different categories, but I assume you don't need that tonight. I think you just want to hear more about us. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so I'll skip through a few slides in the middle, and then I'll send you a copy of this though, so you have it just in case. But I'm sure the middle piece is likely things that you all already know because you've been talking about ARPA already. So I think I just need to share my screen. Just making sure you can see that okay.
Yep, all set.
Okay, great, thank you. So first of all, thanks for having us. My name is Jennifer Thompson, and I'm one of the partners at Capital Strategic Solutions. And I think in the background, my colleagues, Nicole Figueredo and Mike Tessino are likely here as well. But we're here to talk to you tonight about ARPA and whether or not we can help you with some services related to ARPA. Just to give you a little bit of background, we're a Massachusetts-based company out of Marlborough. We all live locally in Massachusetts, and we're all former municipal employees. So me, for example, I just finished, I retired from the town of Plainville. I was the town administrator there for the last 6 years. Prior to that, I was the assistant town manager in what's now the city of Framingham. It was the town of Framingham when I worked there. And I worked primarily in the town of Framingham. That was the bulk of my career. I also served for a few years as the chief financial officer for the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office. And in Framingham, I worked specifically, one of my jobs in Framingham, in addition, before I became the assistant town manager, was working on the ARPA funding. In Framingham, we had $250 million in ARPA funding that we needed to spend and spend correctly. So that's where I really started to get exposure to federal funding and the reporting and the guidelines. And I think it's how I've kind of ended up in this ARPA world. It's a little bit of a repeat. It's not exactly the same, but there's certainly a lot of similarities. So that's just a very brief history of our background. If you decide that you'd like a proposal from us, I'll give you our full resumes as well. So as I mentioned, we're a local company made up of former municipal employees. We are a certified woman-owned business, and we specialize in a few things. The one that I think you're most interested in is grant writing and administration, and as well as community and public relations and community engagement, which certainly comes in hand during the ARPA public participation piece. That's something that we do a lot of work in communities, not just on ARPA, we're doing that, but we also do public outreach for a lot of infrastructure projects and other economic development projects. We help municipalities with their outreach, including regular outreach, social media, website, all kinds of stuff like that. We also do crisis communications and, as I mentioned, website and tactical social media outreach. So our grant writing and administration group, which is led by me, is focused on state and federal grant programs, including ARPA, FEMA, and CARES, which are kind of wrapping up, finally. CARES, I think, is wrapping up. It feels like it probably never will. And FEMA ends at the end of this calendar year as well. So, as you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has posed a serious burden on municipalities. Cities and towns have been struggling to manage not only the funds that you receive, but also this complex nature of the reimbursement. So I can tell you, when I was in Plainville, the CARES Act was daunting, even though we were all very familiar with the federal requirements. We all had our regular jobs to do, and I'm sure your town administrator and your town accountant and your finance director and everyone else feels the same way. I think what was incredibly complicated about CARES is that the rules kind of kept changing along the way. Things that were eligible in the beginning are not eligible, changed midway, and then changed again. Some things you had to send in through FEMA, and some things you had to send in through CARES. So it was a very tough year and a half, I would say, for finance and admin staff in municipalities. So we really recognized that burden that it took, and the fact that existing staff had to, continue to perform their regular duties and do things like, manage your books and set your tax rates. And they had this whole additional workload put on them. So ARPA just kind of does that even more. So some municipalities, especially kind of the mid-range ones like Grafton and smaller, have started hiring consultants to come in and kind of alleviate some of those workload requirements and help advise on the ARPA funding. Some larger communities are hiring in-house staff to do that. And we do have a few larger clients, but they have the in-house staff and they're also still hiring us as a consultant just to advise. But I think, for the small and mid-range communities, it just doesn't make sense to hire full-time people with benefits. So we offer these consulting services so that when ARPA's done, we're done, and you don't have any liability for us. We don't have to pay our health insurance and our retirement, and we walk away, hopefully, and you've maximized your funding. So as you know, these consulting services are eligible through, our fees are eligible through ARPA. So we're managing ARPA, CARES, and FEMA in a number of towns in cities in Massachusetts. Our current clients are the town of Townsend. We have Southborough, Pepperell, Dunstable, Groton, Holden, the city of Gloucester, the city of Lynn, Acushnet, and the town of Stowe. And those big ones so say, for example, the city of Lynn, as I mentioned, they also have staff that manage, but a lot of their ARPA, and we're just in there as a consultant to help them with some of the reporting and the public outreach. But some of these smaller and mid-range towns, we kind of run the gamut on what they're looking for. Some towns need certain services and some towns don't. And we provide whatever they need. So if you are interested in looking at us to come in and help you in Grafton, we'll certainly provide you with references for all these municipalities. And I would certainly encourage you to reach out to them and see if they're happy with us. So what type of assistance do we offer? We, like I said, not every municipality needs everything, but some need help in certain areas and some don't. Some want a lot of public participation and some don't need as much. Some have already decided what projects they want. They strictly need help with some of the reporting, and others want us involved right from the beginning, doing all kinds of things, including, running working groups and discussing the projects and all those type of things. So the types of assistance we offer for ARPA is that project eligibility piece. So we'll come in and help you assess the proposed projects to make sure that they're eligible for funding. We'll compare it against the guidance in the interim final rule to make sure that you're choosing projects that are eligible for ARPA funding. We also help with the revenue loss calculations if you need them. Some communities are having us actually calculate the lost revenue, and others have already calculated it and they just want a second set of eyes to take a look at it. So we do that for them and just make sure that the numbers match up and you've calculated that revenue loss correctly. Some have us do presentations before their town and city boards to assist with the project selection. And some have us do that public outreach to solicit public input and questions on what projects should be funded through ARPA. Certainly a big piece that we're doing in most of the municipalities is the financial reporting. So we'll take care of all of the reporting to the Treasury Department. We've done that quite extensively for CARES and FEMA, and we'll continue to do that for ARPA in the municipalities that we work with. Some folks need help with procurement, either just the regular procurement rules in Massachusetts or the federal procurement rules that are required under ARPA. And again, some folks really need community outreach and in terms of social media and website assistance. We do things like surveys for projects, and it kind of runs the gamut. We have a little bit different approaches in every community based on what the community would like to see. And again, we provide assistance with CARES and FEMA. Those are kind of wrapping up, hopefully, but we're doing that in other communities as well. So the next few slides is where I would normally walk through the different uses for ARPA in the different categories, but I think you're all already familiar with that. Or if you have me back, I can certainly go into detail on all these if you'd like, but I'll send you these slides just in case. I think it's probably stuff that you've all seen before. And it's just examples of the different projects you can use and what categories and what's eligible and what's not eligible. And I'm just flipping through so I can get you to the next two slides, the final two slides. So in terms of what your next steps are, you have this, working group or committee, which is wonderful. Ultimately, your select board, I believe, will vote to decide on which projects get funded or however you choose to set it up. So we do see different models in different municipalities, and it's really based on how each town or city chooses to handle it. Like I said, some towns already know exactly which projects they want to use, and they just need help making sure that things are eligible. Others have us do public outreach and surveys and solicit project ideas. We can provide assistance with that if that's something Grafton is looking for. In a few of our municipalities, the department heads and town administrators formulate a potential list of projects and present them to the select board for consideration. In those cases, we help compile the projects and then we make sure they're eligible before it gets presented to the board to make sure they're not presenting projects that wouldn't be eligible through ARPA anyway. And then again, we have Southborough is doing a working group, probably similar to what you're doing, to discuss potential projects and then make recommendations. And we can certainly help with that if that's something Grafton's looking for. Again, it's completely up to the city or town in terms of how much or as little you'd like to use us or how much you need us, completely based on your unique situation. Just a few, I usually mention this, so I'll mention it. You're probably not here yet, but if there are specific projects that you already know you'd like to fund through ARPA, whether or not you're aligning it with your capital plan. Some folks like to use a matrix or a scoring system to kind of evaluate and prioritize the projects. If that's something you would be interested in, we could help with that. And then there's certainly consideration on whether or not you want to designate any funds to nonprofits, businesses, or residents. We're doing that in some of the communities. So for example, one of our towns is setting up a utility assistance program. So they asked us for help setting it up on their website and getting the form ready and forming a policy on who would be, what residents might be eligible for that type of benefit through ARPA. And then the final thing that I just always say, because usually we're talking about the revenue loss section here, is just to remind folks that if you're using that revenue loss section, to just be mindful of what you're funding with that, and it's not a reoccurring revenue eventually. The ARPA funding will dry up, and if you're funding things like operating expenses, just be cautious of that. And that's it. Sorry, I tried to talk fast to get through those so that we could go right to questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Laura?
Thanks, thanks, Jennifer. It was great to, it was great to have.
Thanks.
I missed it. Do you also help with the paperwork and filing and all of that after the project?
We do. Yep. We stay with you all the way through. Yep.
I already have a proposal from you that this group will review after. Something that you had already sent to. So I think our next step here as a group is figure out if that's the way we want to go. And then we'll let you know probably Wednesday.
Okay. That sounds wonderful. Ooh, I'm so sorry you cut out a little bit there.
No, I actually cut out in real life, so I just. That's on me. So if nobody on this end has any questions, and we ahead of this meeting, so if no one has any questions, we can just say.
Thank you very
Sorry.
much for Jennifer.
Thank you.
Sorry, I missed part of what you were saying, but I think you said we were all set. I think so, but thank you so much.
Bye. Settings, but I think I made it better, but not completely, because it's not picking me up right now talking.
Oh, no, it's not, is it?
Nope. So anyways, you want me to? As of our, Yeah.
As of our?
Yeah.
Very vet, Marvel.